Hey everyone, Joe here. In this episode, I had the privilege of talking to one of my dearest friends, Ronnie Woods, a senior enlisted leader in the United States Air Force who is transitioning to the prestigious position of the Wolf Chief, Command Chief Master Sergeant of the 8th Fighter Wing in Kunsan Air Base, Republic of Korea. We talked about the vital role that empathy, humility, and authenticity play in effective leadership, and much, much more. Enjoy.
Life, learning, leadership, the Llama Lounge.
Yo, welcome back to the Llama Lounge, a dialogue on life, learning, and leadership. I'm Joe Bogdan, and I have a very special guest with me today, a dear friend and a man I consider a brother, Ronnie Woods. What's happening, bro?
What's going on, bro? What's going on?
Oh man, it's been a minute, man. Is it safe to
Yeah,
say that you're in between jobs right now?
I'm definitely in between jobs right now. Like I definitely yesterday I had my last duty day out at Scott. I was sitting in as an interim command chief out there, and
Oh,
now
nice.
I'm headed to Kunsan to go be the wolf chief. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Super excited, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for you, man. So for the listeners, Ronnie is a senior enlisted leader in the United States Air Force, transitioning, as he said, he was filling in as the interim command chief, and he was the superintendent of 375th Operations Group at Scott Air Force Base,
Hmm.
Illinois. And he's moving to the prestigious position, as he just says, the Wolf Chief, Command Chief Master Sergeant of the 8th Fighter Wing at Kunsan Air Base, Republic of
Yeah, buddy.
Korea. And bro, I'm so excited for you. That's like one of the jobs that I would hope to get one day, man, just to strive for, because that's just, man, that's like the pinnacle, man.
Man, I'm telling you, when I got the call for it, I was like, wow, because I was there as a staff sergeant,
Mm,
and I know the environment and the culture there. So when I
right.
got the phone call, I was like, game on, let's do this, let's do it.
Yeah. And it's funny because there's places that we got our home, right? And we're gonna hear a little
Right,
bit about your story where your home is, but then a lot of times we establish a military home. And I've
right,
like been lucky enough to basically Travis is one of mine. I've been here twice. This is my second time here.
yeah,
But Osan is my other one, in Korea, because I've been there twice.
yeah,
I was born right outside of Osan, so that's like home
right,
too in a lot of ways. And
yeah,
it's real cool because Korea is just so amazing. I've driven through Kunsan, but I never got to experience being assigned there. And I can't wait to see all the amazing things you're gonna do down there,
It's crazy, man. You say that it's home for you, man. It's turning into a
man.
home for me. So this gonna be my third trip, going to Korea and doing 1 year.
Hmm.
I did my first tour as a young
Right.
NCO, and then I went to
Yep.
Osan where I met you at,
Right.
where we
Yep.
was
Cobra.
me and you kept seeing each other in the same places, making a difference for airmen. We like, hey man,
Yeah.
we probably should become
Yeah.
friends, man. We did that the
Yeah.
whole time, and then here next Saturday, I'll be headed out there to start do my third year out there. It's gonna be cool, man. It definitely means a lot to me, and I definitely consider Korea home as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, the food out there is just amazing. The people are
Oh wait,
amazing. The
yeah,
mission, the mission, right? I mean, it's so close hold to everything that we do. And the eighth, man, they're so lucky.
yeah,
Steve's rolling out, amazing man,
yes, my
and
guy.
they're getting Ronnie, amazing man, man. And it's just awesome, man. I'm so excited for the eighth fighter wing as well as for you and your family, bro.
Right, man. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate Steve too, man. He's been awesome, and he's setting a
Yeah.
good example and modeling a good behavior of what I need to do out there because he's getting after it. He was getting
Yeah.
after it in his year out there. So I'm looking at him like, yeah, you set the bar.
Oh yeah, man. And I think I actually saw a couple pictures of him smiling too, because that's a rarity to
Man,
see
that dude
Steve
don't
Seagal
smile,
smiling.
man. Steve don't smile. That's gonna be the biggest difference between me and him, right? Like he don't smile in no photos, and I'm smiling in
Right,
every photo, and I'm like looking like
right.
super happy and stuff like
I
that.
know.
But I was security forces, so
Hmm.
like that's kind of a thing, like with being a cop. Like, hey man, I
Right,
gotta look the part, I gotta look serious,
right, right.
and
I know. You gotta
so
be all happy go
that's
lucky.
oh
Yeah,
man,
man.
yeah.
boy, though. But you, that's one of the your trademark things, man. Is an infectious smile, man. Every time I'm around you,
Right,
I want to smile, man.
right,
So
right.
I really appreciate that too.
You know what, man? The smile comes from, like when I was getting mentored, a lot of times, people would tell me, when you see somebody, they might be, you never know what they're going through. You never know their story, and just you being positive might be the difference between them having a good and bad day. Because I would tell you, it ain't every day I want to be like happy and positive. But what I've learned, especially, being a senior NCO, being a chief, hey, if you can't bring that positive influence, then maybe you need to take a day off or something like that, because you just never know when you see folks. So that's a lot of times that's where the smile comes from. I just want to make
Yeah.
someone happy.
Right. Man, that's awesome too, because having that smile, I mean, it could be a habit, and when we look at things and we all want to look at them as negative, then that becomes a habit too, right? So when we look
Hmm.
through, because every day, isn't going to be the happiest day, but if you can
Right,
see that there is positive things that happen during that day and things to smile
right.
about, you develop a great habit, and I think that can be infectious. Just like I said about your smile, man, it's infectious, man.
Yeah, man. It's definitely something I've learned over the years, and
Mhm.
definitely something that Kunsan's about to get the big smile, man, from cheek to cheek. They getting it,
Yeah.
man.
Man. So yeah, speaking of, so we kind of like alluded to a little bit of it about, how you came up and everything, but
Right.
I always find it interesting, and I've known you for a while, but there's parts of your story that I know that I'm not even privy to yet, I probably
Yeah.
haven't heard about. So I'd love
Right.
it if you could like share a little bit about how Ronnie Woods became, Ronnie Woods of today. With our audience, because I think we always learn something from another airman's story. You know what I mean?
You know what? So my story, like when I look at my story, it's very polarizing, right? So when I
Mhm.
look at it, I've been the airman that couldn't do anything right. I've been the senior NCO that couldn't do anything wrong. And when I look at it overall, when I look at the narrative of my career, I'm neither one. I'm like someone right in the middle. When I was an airman that couldn't do, they thought I couldn't do things right. Like I had the same qualities that I have now, and when I was a senior NCO and I was number one on everybody's list, I was still finding myself, and I was a work in progress and far from perfect. So it started, my career started out, I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, came from the inner city, didn't have anybody in my family that was in the military or anything like that. So I kind of came in blind, be 100% honest with you. I didn't even know a whole lot about the United States Air Force. All I knew was they fly planes. That was probably, I came in with that little of knowledge. And then, that first day at basic training on that bus, on that dark street. And
Oh,
then,
yeah, oh yeah.
they teaching us our reporting statements and how to stand at attention and things like that. And then that first TI yelled, and I swear I've been downhill ever since then. But I started out my career security forces, first 10 years of my career. And uh, probably the first year and a half, in my career, I was struggling big time, just adapting, going from a very unstructured environment in Chicago to going to a very structured environment, and learning a lot of things in my first 2 years, which led to me getting in a lot of trouble. So I got in a lot of trouble, got Article 15, got a couple of LORs, got offered an administrative discharge uh, by my commander. I actually went in there and actually talked to him and gave a verbal rebuttal where I asked him to give me another chance. And he gave me another chance because one of the crazy things about me was when I joined the military and I was security forces, I was had challenges off duty, but on duty, I had a lot of the qualities I got now, good
Mhm.
organizational skills, like I was self-motivated and I would do really good at work. So it was a tough decision for that commander. And I think, me talking to him, he gave me one more chance, and I was like, this is it. Like I gotta, you know, make a turnaround. And then after that, I ended up linking up with a NCO who was who had a similar background to me, but was doing very
Mhm.
well, and he kind of put me under his wing, and I kind of took off from there. So I was security forces for 10 years. Never really never really had a passion for that career field. So I decided
Mhm.
to do something else. So at my 10-year mark, I crossed over to command and control battle management, or they refer to themselves by the AFSC, one Charlie 5. Um, I did that, and that's probably when my career kind of took off because it's a very small career field with not as many NCOs, and in security forces, even though I didn't have a real big passion for law enforcement, one of the great things they do in security forces is really build leaders. I mean, as a senior airman, you can be leading a flight of 30 folks, and
Right.
you're dealing with their schedules, you're dealing with their on and off duty conduct. So as a tech sergeant, when I transitioned over to command and control battle management, that really stood out, and kind of burnt through the ranks. I burnt through the ranks relatively fast, to the point where,
Mhm.
I was a chief at 17, sold on at 18. And it's definitely a lot of ups and downs, in my career. I've learned a lot. Uh, and it's always been the same every time I've learned to do things as an NCO, which is really, take care of people, tell your story, because it's a lot of people with similar stories, where they were late bloomers like me. So I consider myself, like a late bloomer, and did that. On the personal side, so that's kind of my story on the professional side. On the personal side, got 3 children. My son, Sincere, he's 18. He joins the Air Force this summer. He's going
Nice.
cyber operations. We
Okay.
got 2 girls, age 14 and 9. My daughter will be 10 next week. And my wife,
Mhm.
Akia, she did 6 years in the Air Force as
Mhm.
well. And she got out and pursued some other dreams and things like that. So yeah, man,
Yeah.
that's kind of like my story and my career in a nutshell. Like, been on both sides of it, man, and it's a beauty to take that experience and leverage that when
Mhm.
I'm leading people at work.
Yeah, and and what you talked about, how coming from the support side going over to ops, I mean, that
Right,
is, quite a transition. But
right,
and I'm not saying that, they don't develop great leaders across, across an installation, depending on whatever craft they might be in or
right,
specialty. But support, you're right. Anything in the support world, typically you end up leading a lot of people. I mean, I was a staff
right.
sergeant. I already had a 22 person work center, trying to spin it
Yeah,
around. So I think you do get a lot of that peripheral learning. That's what I always like to call it.
right.
It's like you're getting put into a situation and you don't even know you're learning, but you are, like, off the
You
sides
are
on all these things. Yeah. It's that Mr. Miyagi teaching you, right? The wax on, wax off.
right.
You don't even know what you're learning when you're doing it.
And it's the best form of learning, like
Hmm.
actually doing it. We can read books till we blue in the
Hmm.
face. We can do these podcasts and give tips
Hmm.
to everyone until we're blue in the
Right.
face. But you have to be out there and living it and doing it. And like you're right, like when I was doing it, I didn't even realize it, how much I was learning. I didn't realize it till I went into a new environment where, on the operations side, they're more technically focused versus, leading people. And I went there, I'm like, oh, this is the easy one. Like I was working these type of issues as a senior
Hmm.
airman staff sergeant, and as a tech sergeant trying to find your way as a retrainee and learning the job. I learned then that was how I was going to make my imprint. It wasn't going to be controlling aircraft and battle management. It was
Hmm.
going to be, I'm gonna take these weapons controllers and I'm gonna take these battle managers and I'm gonna make them
Hmm.
better men and women. And
Right.
that's kind of went from there.
Yeah. So would you say that your transition was pretty easy, or were there some challenges also going from like the support that side of things to the operational side of things?
It was easy when it came to leading people. In terms of
Hmm.
doing the job, it was relatively challenging because I was a tech sergeant at the time, an E6, and airmen don't airmen don't really understand retrainee. They just see the stripes
Right.
and they say,
Right.
you know how to do the job. So I had to make a learning curve
Mhm.
really fast. And in battle management, it's a whole nother world, man. Like you have to speak pilot. So you have to be able to speak how the combat pilots talk and be able to follow those things and follow it relatively fast. And I struggled. A matter of
Right.
fact, I'll be 100% honest with you. I never really fully got comfortable with it. But,
Mm.
I ended up making Master Sergeant. And they put me more in a managerial role and had me doing
Mm-hmm.
things to where I can utilize my strengths, which is leading people,
Right.
organizational skills, which is handling projects and getting things done. And even though I would say a slightly above average battle manager, my meat and
Mm-hmm.
potatoes and my bread and butter always was, taking care of people to get them focused on the job. And, as I moved up to senior master sergeant, when I was a squadron superintendent out there with you at OSAN, um,
Mm-hmm.
that was predominantly my focus was, we got personnel that's really stressed out about these tactics, techniques, and procedures. I'm gonna find a
Mm-hmm.
unique way to provide them the resources that they need, but also at the same time, take care of them and make sure they're good to go to keep them focused on the job and and that was the good thing, like one of my early nicknames in my career was I was the empathetic leader, right? um, you know, like some of my peers used to kind of tease me about that, say,
Mm-hmm.
Woods is the empathetic leader. He gonna make sure he calm the room down and get everybody focused and how them put things in their
Yeah.
proper perspective. So yeah, definitely. I would say it was tough technically. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't tough in terms of personnel management.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of great points there. One, I would say is that it takes a lot of humility to be willing to, take on that role that, a sea change from what you were doing
Right,
to moving forward, right? And to find that happiness in what you want to do. And I think a lot of times we get stuck as humans in this sunken cost fallacy. It's like, I already invested 10 years in
right,
this career field. I don't want to start
right,
over, right? But in reality,
right,
like if you 10 years is a 10 years, but in the grand scheme of a lifetime of being happiness, sometimes you gotta, a lifetime of happiness, you gotta make that transition. And it's not a smart move to kind of just stay in something that you're not necessarily happy in doing. If you have the opportunity to make yourself uncomfortable and grow a little bit somewhere else, there's a lot
right,
to that.
right. Right. I always tell folks, so when I'm sitting down talking to folks, whether they're in the military or whether I'm just mentoring civilians, for
Mm-hmm.
me, when I use myself as an example, it was really follow your passions. So
Mm-hmm.
I had a passion. I wanted to be in the military, but as I was in security forces, and don't get me wrong, towards right before I left, I was doing relatively well, in
Mm-hmm.
security forces. But when I transitioned over, it was really just me kind of following a passion and
Right.
and doing something that I felt, was something I had an interest in, because at some point it was going to come out that I wasn't passionate about what I was doing, and
Right.
who knows what would have happened. I definitely wouldn't be sitting here in the positions I am talking to you if I would have continued to do something that I didn't enjoy doing.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. We get stuck in those roles, we stay there, and then in addition to that, I think one thing that kind of keeps us together, you and I, is that we have that same
Right,
perspective. Is because in our profession, we could be overly tribal about things, and
right.
sometimes we don't want to tell
Oh yeah,
people to go do something else, and we don't want to allow them to go do it. Like, why don't, like,
right,
and I'm in the civil engineer career field. It's like, why wouldn't you want to be a civil engineer? Why would you want to try something
right,
different? It's like, no, but if
right,
we have the mentality, if we want them to be happy and better human beings, like you talk about, then we should
right,
help them reach their goals or whatever those might be. And I
right,
think that I think we're getting better at it now.
right.
But in the past, it was like you could see it in the past. It was like, no, if you don't want to be part of our team, then I'm not helping you. And that's just a bad way to look at things.
It's just the emphasis, man, of being focused on the individual,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So when you're connecting with that person and you're being focused on that individual, when they sit in there and have a conversation with you, the emphasis of that should start with what their passions are. And you give them the pros and cons on both ends. I've had this discussion at least 1,000 times with members where they come in
Hmm.
my office and I
Right.
say, if it's about money, you can take your skills that you learned in the military and the Air Force, and you can go out and you can make more money.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not about the money, if it's about being a part of something that's bigger than yourself, and going out and making a difference and being a part of, the great 1%ers that I call everyone in the military. If you want to do that, no, the money's not going to be kind of where you comparable to the outside, and you go from there. And I always end with, it's no wrong answer. Unless you do something that you don't want to do, that's the wrong answer. If your passion is financial growth and finances, and you decide to turn down, a job where you might get paid double, that's always going to stick with you, even in the military. And if you go chase the money, right, and, you miss kind of that team-minded concept and being part of something that's bigger than yourself, which is something we take for granted all the time in the military. But, right, it's something that I know for a fact is a reality, that team-minded concept that we have, because my wife actually, took the path of getting out and taking on different passions. And, she missed that. Like, she missed like that team-minded concept, that us against the world, the camaraderie and things like that. So,
yeah. I mean, it's true. You could go try to, stack some dollars if you want to, but if you're not happy, just miserable with some money, you know what I mean? And vice versa too. But yeah. And so you talked to, go ahead. Go ahead.
And that's something, it works on both ends, right? That's something we got to know as leaders, is that everybody's formula in terms of success is going to be different, and it's definitely not going to be aligned with yours. So don't try to make them be the next you. You can leverage your experiences to give them options, but you definitely want to just provide them with the facts so they can make the best decision for them.
Yeah, it's so normal for us to project our own goals on other people, and we got to really be careful about that. And I tell people all the time, man, everybody's white picket fence ain't the same. Mine is very different looking than another person's. So we got to kind of just be aware of that. My white picket fence might be a loft up in the inner city, you know what I mean? Where somebody else's might be actually a white picket fence or a farm somewhere, but we got to figure out what that looks like for them and help them get there.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So you talked a little bit about that empathic leader, right? You said that you're the dude. That's what they titled it. A while back, you wrote an article titled "Leading with Empathy," and in there, man, it was really powerful because you shared that you were having trouble, like you kind of talked about struggling, adapting to the military life, and then and you had a first supervisor that maybe they weren't able to connect with you as well, and then later on you moved. Can you kind of like explore that a little bit with us, because some of the readers may, and we're going to link that article to the show notes to here, but I thought it would be kind of cool to revisit that a little bit.
First off, that's one of the highlights of my career. You giving me that opportunity to express some of my thoughts on leading with empathy and being an empathetic leader. Just being able to put my thoughts down and even go kind of back in time and tell my story. Even when I read it, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, man, you actually went through this and you survived it. Like, you need to start promoting this a little bit more. But I would tell you, with my first supervisor, it wasn't, when I look at it and the challenges that we had, it was just my supervisor, he wasn't doing anything good or bad. He just wasn't equipped to handle me. He wasn't equipped yet as a senior. He was a senior airman, so in security forces, one of the things that senior airmen are taking on 6th, 2nd Airmen, because career field's so big. And he wasn't equipped, to provide me with what I needed at the time. So we had very different backgrounds. We didn't really talk. We didn't communicate. And he only really talked to me when I did something wrong. So he wasn't really providing me with some of the things that I needed to adapt, because it was purely a adaptation issue. It was
Mhm.
purely that, my first 2 years, I was going from one extreme to the other, and I wasn't handling it well, and
Mhm.
I probably needed a supervisor that was a little bit more seasoned, maybe a NCO, um,
Mhm.
and our personalities wasn't meshing well, and it was really tough. So like me, as I look back on it, I don't even say he was a bad supervisor. I just
Right.
say like I was a case study for him that he just wasn't ready for. Like he wasn't
Right.
ready to really address like some of the needs that I had. And one of
Mhm.
the key things that I do when I look back at that situation is one of the things that was broken and broken relatively early, and I think he might have inadvertently did it, was the trust factor.
Mm.
So so I didn't go to my supervisor because I didn't trust him. I didn't go to
Mhm.
him and say, you know, my I'm sending half of my money back home to my parents. This is why I didn't pay this bill on time, and you giving me a LOR for it because I'm
Mhm.
uh I'm taking care of my family back home. And you know what? If I would have trusted him because he wasn't a bad person, he probably would have walked me over to the Family Readiness Center and
Mhm.
helped me with some budgets. But I never talked to him about that. Even when they issued the paperwork and things like that,
Yeah.
and on his end, he was still learning how to communicate. He definitely
Mhm.
was still learning how to make a connection with junior enlisted personnel. And he definitely didn't understand that we're all different. The 6 to 8 people that he led were all different and needed, to be connected with in a different way. And here's the reality about, that situation. Um, if I wouldn't have got a new supervisor, somebody that can handle that, I more than likely would have led down a path to where I'm definitely not talking to you right now. And I always, so it's very complex and it's very challenging to lead people at that level. But I always tell people in terms of leading with empathy in that situation, it's not hard to just care. Now you might make mistakes and you might do
Mm.
things not right. You might not know you got to go to the Airman Family Readiness Center or you need to refer to your first sergeant. But if you
Mhm.
simply just legitimately just care about that person and
Mhm.
really want their best interest in your heart, you will do well. And when I transitioned to my next supervisor, it was like, but he was more experienced though. He was an NCO
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it was a lot different. He would invite me to his home on holidays, and which I didn't want to go, by the way. I'll be honest with you.
Right.
Like I didn't want to go. Who wants to go to their supervisor house and hang out with them? I didn't want to do
Right.
that. But it was like some things that was happening, when he did that. I actually went hunting with him as well. Like he took me hunting, which
Mm.
is another thing I didn't want to do. But
Right.
he would
That
take
must be your
and
first time, right?
right, my first time, man, like my first time going hunting, and it was a
Yeah.
horrible experience. But I, but I would tell you, we like so we sat. So in my mind, when I thought hunting was like a scene off Rambo in my mind, like an action movie. That's what I thought it was. So, but actually, a lot of it is just sitting in a bunker,
Sitting
just
around. Yep.
sitting. But guess what we were doing? We were talking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that we were connecting. And I
Mhm.
was learning a little bit of his story. He was learning a lot
Mhm.
about me and why I see things. And I don't know if you can realize like my supervisor hunted and I didn't, right? It wasn't one of those things where, like we had similar backgrounds. We had very different
Mhm.
backgrounds. But
Right.
those commonalities start to kick in. And then going back to what I said before, trust. Like
Mhm.
we started building trust. So when I started having challenges and issues, I was like, oh, he got my best interest in heart. Yeah, I can't pay these
Mhm.
bills, Sergeant.
Right.
I'm trying to figure it out. And then he would start leading me down the right path. And then
Right.
it very influential in my career because I always kept those experiences with me as a model of, when I was an NCO, this is how I'm going to address things because the harsh reality for me being from the inner city and being African American, the majority of the people that I supervise going to have different backgrounds than me. So I
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to master the art of finding that connection and finding those
Right.
commonalities that we have, despite, you know, having different perspectives on things. So that was really like the beginning of me to finding my path and my niche, you know, with having that empathy and leading and going from there. So definitely some like I said when I was writing that article, it was a good memory, good to go
Yeah,
down memory lane and look
that's
at some of
awesome.
those stories.
Yeah, man. And we really appreciated you writing that article. And I know when I read it, I thought a lot about how I love the way you do a very a good job of crafting that, hey, this member was not a bad person. I didn't
Right,
connect with them, right? And they were
right,
inexperienced.
right,
And never at any point do you say they're a bad supervisor or a bad leader or
right,
whatever. It was just more like,
right,
they may not have been the person you needed at the time. And I think us as
right,
leaders, we all need to have the humility to believe that, to understand that too. Because even me as a chief, maybe I can't connect with this person for whatever reason it might be. Maybe they're going through some issues that only a female will understand. So I might need to connect them to a strong female leader, right? I mean, like, these
right,
are different things
right.
that we have to, like, I can't solve every single problem for you. You know what I mean? I need to know that. And I
Yes.
need to be humble enough to be willing to use my connection power to connect them to the right person.
Absolutely. That's a great point that you bring up. That is a great point for our young supervisors out there to
Mm-hmm.
understand. Here's the reality. You're not going to have the answer every time. And we have this defense mechanism, especially in the military, where we don't want to ask for help. We don't want to ask for help. We don't want to say, you know, I got this motivated kid from the inner city, but I can't connect with, you know, like, can I have some
Yeah.
tips? Or matter of fact, not even tips. Can you go see if you can get something out of them that, you know, that I can't because I'm struggling with that. But I also, like I said, looking back now, again, I got a different perspective now as a chief. Looking back on it, I don't believe that senior airman was able to even grasp that at that point,
Right.
you know, in their
Mm-hmm.
careers that, you know, I need to reach out for help, you know.
Yeah.
And like I said, the the challenging part with that is that if somebody didn't catch that soon and switch to supervisory, you know, maybe
Mm-hmm.
that young airman and myself who had a lot of potential doesn't get to the point where they get to spread their wings. They're on their way, you know, into a different path in life outside of the military.
Yeah, I mean, even when you just told that story, I'm just thinking that's a rough go to be a senior airman. That
Yeah,
means you've been in the Air Force only so many years, and
right.
you probably don't even know how to supervise yourself right yet. And then
No,
you got
no, you
like what,
don't.
six to eight people,
Right,
6 to 8 lives
right,
that you're trusted with to try to
right.
help. I mean, that's just a rough go. I mean,
It was a rough go, you know. Again, that me as an A1C, I just was thinking, bad supervisor, don't care about me.
mm,
Me looking back on
right.
it as a senior NCO, I'm like, member was not equipped for to deal with somebody like me. You know, just
Hmm.
wasn't equipped for that yet. And at that point in their careers,
Hmm.
and it was challenging on both ends.
Yeah, I mean, there is some goodness that could come out of challenging someone early in their career, but that's just a challenge that most of us would not be able to overcome,
Right,
and they would need more support in that
right,
situation. And what support they got, we don't necessarily know. I mean, you're a young airman at
right.
the time, like most of us, we were all knuckleheads when we were, airmen were
Yeah,
running
yeah,
around,
yeah,
trying to figure out what we're
yeah.
doing, and some of us just got lucky
Right.
and didn't get caught.
Mm-hmm.
But I say that all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
was just reviewing someone's records yesterday. I was like, yeah, I noticed that you didn't get a decoration at your first PCS. And the dude just smiled at me. And I
Yeah.
was like, we typically forgive that because we know we were
Yeah.
all knuckleheads when we were airmen,
Right.
you know,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's
I was just doing a below the zone board, right? And I was doing a below the zone board. No, no, actually I take that back. I stand correct. I wasn't doing a below the zone board. I was doing force distribution for senior airmen at the
mm-hmm,
wing level, the small one. And
mm-hmm,
looking at members' first EPRs, the ones who had like two or three, I always kind of
right,
looked at it with a grain of salt. I'm like, man,
right.
you know,
Mm-hmm,
first one, like I'm not going to hold a lot against them. that first
Right.
year, because of you're right, man. Everybody's got a
Yeah.
history, and everybody's going to learn and
Right.
grow during that period.
Right. I mean, we're just trying to figure stuff out, and then we're like trying to pretend like we're something else at that age. You know, we're
Right,
still, our brains are still forming. We're trying to figure it out,
right,
but we got a weapon in our hands, and we're going to take
right.
care of mission. You know, it's like that's a mix. That's an interesting mix for a potential disaster, anyway.
I'm telling you, man. Like I'm telling you, I was always really good at work.
Hmm.
What I struggle with is when I left work and
Hmm. Right.
and made a lot of bad decisions. A lot of bad decisions. And it took me a while to take that same attitude I had professionally and transition it to my personal goals. So
Yeah, and when you say that about with a grain of salt, for everybody listening, and when we're talking about potentially looking at evaluations, people's appraisals, if you're not in the Air Force or military,
right,
and potentially recommending promotion, right? And
right,
it's a little boost to help you get promoted, and those are
right,
conversations that we have to have. And when you're looking at those evals, yeah, I take it with a grain of salt when it's not good, but also if it's just perfect, because you're really like
right.
you got to look at it both ways. Like,
Uh-huh.
is this person really
Uh-huh.
perfect? Because I know my evals were perfect at that time too, but I knew I was a knucklehead.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right,
So,
right,
yeah,
right,
so it's an interesting dichotomy that you got to kind of analyze when you're reviewing those records. And
man.
it's not even fair sometimes for us to review it. You got one eval for like 4 years of their career,
Right.
sometimes. So yeah, so awesome, man. Something I wanted to kind of just touch on was, you're probably, to me, one of the realest people I've met when it comes to how you're willing to talk about things, and as a
Yeah.
leader, you know what I mean? And I just have always appreciated it. And whenever I'm
Right.
talking to Ronnie Woods, I've never felt like I was talking to a facade. And
Right.
I never got that feeling like, oh, you're shaking my hand right now, and then oh, someone else comes along and and that you might feel is
Right.
more important. You might move. I never felt like that at all. And there are those people out there.
Right.
And I've always kind of looked at it as like, to inspire people. And I kind of did a short video on it. To inspire people, you just got
Yeah.
to show them that you're human. Right. And,
Right.
and,
Right.
and you do that because some people are
Right.
just out there trying to impress people.
Right.
And there's two different things, right? You impress people. All you're doing is showing them how like not human you are, right? How perfect you are.
Right.
You're trying to show all the good
Right.
parts. But if you want to inspire people, you got to show them that you're human, you make mistakes, and that they can also achieve your success because you're human and
Right.
so are they. And you do it, man. You're one of the people that I look to and see that example, and I really appreciate
Right.
you.
You know what, man? And I would tell you, for my young folks out there trying to find their way, when I kind of look back at my career, that was kind of like when my career took off. When I just woke
Mhm.
up one day and said, you know what, I'm going to work today and I'm going to be who I am. You know what? And I learned, when I wasn't trying to be something that I thought other people wanted me to be, and I started being real and being myself, it became really easy. You don't have
Right.
to think. You don't have to think
Hmm.
when you're being yourself. When I'm sitting here
Hmm.
talking to you, I'm not,
Right.
holding back anything. I'm giving people who I am, and I'm giving people me, and having that humility. And it does, I look at it as it is makes it easy for me, because I have a goal of connecting with people, but by
Hmm.
being real and being myself, it makes it easy to connect with people because people need to see that
Hmm.
we're not perfect. Sometimes they
Hmm.
look at us and they see all of those stripes on our chest or our arms, depending on which uniform that you have on, and saying that that we're in the top 1%. That sometimes they translate that as that you're perfect, but we're not perfect. We need to show vulnerability. We need to show, that we're growing every day just like them, and we have our challenges, and we're trying to, get better and do things like that. So I really do appreciate, that you see that, and I see it in you as well. The fact that you be yourself, and it motivates people below us to go out, and be themselves, because I have a goal all the time of having relevancy, and realness, and being something that people can look at and know that, it's legit, man. It's not like some super polished person that don't make mistakes and things like that. Now, don't get me wrong, as a senior NCO, I took my spirits along the way, with being exactly who I am. And I was okay with that, because the connection that I had with personnel meant a lot more to me than what, some superior above me, felt, the direction that you should take on things. So.
Right. And, to go back on what you were talking about earlier too, though, is if you build that trust with your leaders, you know what I mean? When you are laying it down and potentially, going to take a spear for something, they know that you're, that you're coming from the right place as well, even if they disagree with you. So maybe they'll throw that spear anyway, but might be blunted a little bit. You know what I mean? It might not be all sharpened. So I think that there's so much there when it comes to that building that foundational of trust. So when we kind of talked about quite a few things about empathy and all that, it's like, do you feel that is like the core of your leadership philosophy? Like, I think, we all should have a leadership philosophy on how, if we don't, we're just out there reacting to stuff as leaders, right? But if we actually have that core inner philosophy of how we are as humans to lead, and I think it helps not only ease the distress on our people because we know what we're doing, but also helps us live to our meaning. And I think that's really important for folks. And for our listeners, if you've never even considered thinking about writing one down or crafting one, there's a lot of goodness that comes with that.
Right. Yeah. For me, it is the core. Empathetic leadership is the core. And that's where everything starts with me, in terms of my leadership philosophy is. And it's relatively easy, I would tell you, when you think about empathy and taking care of people and connecting with people. It's part of the reason when I was a young master sergeant, when I had the option of becoming a commissioned officer, that I didn't go in that direction, because, the commissioned officer is more risk to the mission, getting the mission done. And I always looked at that senior enlisted leader as a person who was more risk to the force. What does this decision mean for the people? What does this decision mean for the resilience of personnel in terms of taking care of themselves, taking care of other people that they supervise, and taking care of their families? I always look at it from that perspective. But in terms of like the three big things, so it starts with empathetic leadership, but then, I have three basic priorities, and I try to keep things relatively simple because, I'm not like a philosopher. I read a lot of books and things like that to get tips, but I'm a simple guy that do super simple things. And for me, it's growth and development of people is one main thing. It's being ready to do the job. So in the military, we call that readiness, being operationally ready to do the mission and get the mission done. And then your resilience, in terms of taking care of your family, taking care of your supervisors, taking care of others. I take those three simple things, and there's so many other subsets for all of those, but it's like those are the three things that I kind of look at. And again, it always comes from a place of empathetic leadership and connecting with that person. And I will tell you, at our levels, at the strategic levels, being a chief master sergeant, it's not necessarily about connecting with that one person anymore, with like it was when I was an NCO. Now it's more of influencing the leaders who influence the supervisors, to do things the right way. And that's kind of been the journey I've been on, the last 2 years as a leader, is learning how to spread that message that we portray out there without being hands-on. Because it's 4,000 people here at Scott Air Force Base. As an interim command chief, I can't connect with all 4,000. It's just impossible, So So you have to do it in different ways and do it from a more of a macro level. And it's definitely a work in progress on my end. I tell you, bro, I'm growing every day in terms of that.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a weird contrast there too. It's like a macro level because it's huge, but then really you got to focus on the micro things at what you can influence at your
Right,
level. So
right.
it's like you got to identify the levers of change that are going to make the biggest influence. And some people,
Sure do.
it's difficult to do. And the one thing that I think connects us, and we could call it different philosophies, but we're just trying to create world championship winning coaching trees. You know what I mean? Like
Man,
when I look at the Ronnie
man.
Woods coaching tree, I'm going to see a
Right,
bunch of senior NCOs that later on are winning
right,
championships wherever they go. And that's always
right,
been my goal is
right,
take my senior NCOs and I want them to win some championships wherever they go. And I got to equip them. Right.
right. You gotta provide them with that. You gotta be able to influence the people that's doing the majority of influencing, and and uh and find creative ways to do that. Like even in the Llama Lounge, right? Like us sitting here talking, and some of the things that we doing here in the lounge kind of goes directly to that. Like even in this conversation we having right now, man. Like my goal in this is just to inspire one person. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to inspire thousands of people or hundreds of
Mm-hmm.
people. I want one person to watch this and just be inspired. And I felt like
Right.
it was worth our
Right.
time, to be able to do
Yeah.
that. And that's definitely the good thing about this is just finding unique ways to connect with people and sharing our stories from the perspective of being relatable, as we talked about
Mm-hmm.
earlier, having that relatability, saying, you can do this by doing it your way and connecting with people and doing that. So
That's a good goal, man, because we probably only got like 7 listeners. So if we could get one of them,
yeah,
we climbing though. We started off with 1.5 listeners. So we moving up. We moving up.
right. We're moving up. That's good, man. That's good.
Yeah, man, awesome, man. I really appreciate you. You know what we typically do? We try to wrap these up with a leadership rapid fire. And you talked about you don't mind being vulnerable. What we do is
Yeah,
we shoot some questions at you and try
let's
to
do it,
get
man.
the quick answer that you got. All right.
Right. Let's
All
do
right,
it,
man.
man.
The leadership rapid fire question number 1: what is your favorite leadership trait? And I'm sure we kind of already talked about it, but your favorite leadership
Oh,
trait.
empathy.
All right, perfect. All right, so what is your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is they don't know what they don't care what you know. They want to know you care.
Awesome. Heck yeah. All right. We talked about reading a little bit. What's your number 1 book that you would recommend to an aspiring leader?
I would say Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Okay. Nice. Nice. And how do you find your harmony between life, learning, and leadership? Because that's what we do at the Llama Lounge: life, learning, and
Right.
leadership. How do you find that harmony between those 3?
For me, I find the harmony by knowing yourself. Knowing yourself, knowing who you are. You can't have any of those qualities that we're doing here at the lounge without first knowing exactly the person that you are inside and out, to be able to lead, to find those things and find those passions and understand people and understand like what you can provide for others when you know yourself. And you can be able to, ask for help. And it takes time. Like when you finding your harmony and you're finding out what you're trying to do with that, you got to understand that it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to have to go through your trials and tribulations. You're going to have your successes. You're going to have your failures. And each and every time you're going to learn and get better. These journeys that me and you've had, these journeys started day 1 when we were at basic training. And we've kind of evolved to where we are now. And even now, we're still on a journey.
Oh yeah, it never ends, man. We're always trying to put ourselves in situations where
Right,
we're uncomfortable. We got to grow a little bit, and I think that's the
right,
biggest difference between when we were young versus older. We kind of mature and realize that that's the
right,
only way you're gonna grow, right?
right,
Man,
right.
Man, Ronnie, yeah, we got to do this again once you're in Kunsan, because this is a great conversation, man. I love talking to you. I don't think we've even seen each other physically since back when we were at Osan together. It's
No,
been a
we
minute.
haven't. No, we
Yeah.
haven't. We haven't seen each other in a while, but through social media and things like
Yeah.
that, it don't feel that way. As I've
Right.
seen you going on your journey and I've been going on my
Mhm.
journey, and we've stayed pretty connected
Yeah.
throughout things. Like I said, our connection started because of we enjoy doing the same things. Like I
Hmm.
said in Osan, I'm like, dude, everywhere I'm at, you're there as well. Like let's become
Mhm.
friends. And it's definitely been cool. I definitely want to do it again because, like I told you, I'm on my journey, man. I'm about to go
Yeah.
take this role on that hopefully I can go out there and make a small difference for some of the airmen out at the Wolf Pack. Definitely
Yeah.
looking forward to that and taking care of some people.
All right. Yay. I really appreciate your time, Ronnie. It was great catching up, and I look forward to running this one back again sometime soon. To all of our listeners, as always, be safe, stay healthy. Llama's out.
Thanks for listening to the show. We'd love for you to connect with us at www.llama-leadership.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/Llama Leadership, and also on Instagram at Llama Leaders. And a big thanks to Mike Whitmer for the music. To check out more of this stuff, go to soundcloud.com/Mike-Whitmer. Thanks again. See you on the next episode.